My name is David Lorne, and for over 15 years, I poured everything I had into the Western operations of Valamont Apparel. I didn't rise through connections or buzzwords. I rose through grit, through early mornings, late-night calls, and showing up when no one else would. My team didn't just meet targets, we set them. We transformed an overlooked branch into Valamont's most profitable division, year after year. And then, just like that, it was over. On a rainy Tuesday morning, I was summoned to the 22nd floor conference room by Brandon Kane, our new CEO, fresh out of a venture firm with more spreadsheets than scruples. He didn't even pretend to make small talk. "We're streamlining," he said flatly, without looking up from his tablet. "Your position is being eliminated. Effective immediately." No gold watch, no thank you speech, just an HR rep shifting uncomfortably in the corner, and a security guard holding a cardboard box. 15 years of loyalty packed in 10 minutes. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I nodded, stood up, and walked out with my leather briefcase tucked under my arm, the same one my wife gave me when I landed the job before cancer took her. Inside that briefcase was something they hadn't counted on. My own records, the real story, the relationships, the notes, the quiet moments of trust that built a legacy Brandon couldn't begin to comprehend. As the glass tower shrank in my rearview mirror, it hit me. I hadn't just lost a job. I'd been erased by people who didn't even understand what had been built. But while they thought I was walking away with nothing, they had no idea what I was truly taking with me. As I pulled away from the towering glass facade of Valamont Apparel, I thought I'd feel relieved, maybe even light. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't tethered to quarterly targets, supplier crises, or midnight client calls. But freedom wasn't what I felt, not even close. Instead, my chest was heavy, with disappointment, with disbelief, with betrayal. I kept replaying Brandon Keene's words in my head. "We're streamlining. It's not personal." Except it was personal. How could it not be? I'd built this division from the ground up. When I joined, Western Ops was on the chopping block, hemorrhaging clients, morale in the dirt, and barely making payroll. I turned that around. I was on the road every week, sitting with procurement officers in dusty conference rooms, listening to their frustrations with other suppliers, late shipments, misaligned sizing, broken promises. I promised different and delivered it. We went from being a liability to bringing in over $5 million in net accounts annually. I'd been the one to save the Highstone medical account when their CEO threatened to pull out over a uniform order error. I personally stayed up until 3 a.m. inspecting packaging before a product launch for Corvus Realty because their executive team requested me, not someone in logistics. And this is how I was thanked? The new CEO had been with us for 2 months, 8 weeks, before deciding I was expendable. Not once had he sat down with my team, visited our client sites, or asked about the retention strategies that had made our numbers bulletproof. To him, I was just a salary on a spreadsheet, replaceable. But what Brandon didn't realize was that you can't spreadsheet relationships. As I turned into my driveway that afternoon, I didn't feel rage in the explosive way you see in movies, no shattered plates or loud speeches. It was quieter than that. A deep, steady burn that started behind my ribs and refused to leave. I walked into my study, shut the door, and placed the worn leather briefcase on the desk. From inside, I pulled out a series of manila folders, my personal contact book, and a thumb drive, my insurance. See, I'd never fully trusted the new regime after the merger. Their language was too polished, their smiles too curated. So I'd begun saving everything. Client preferences, order histories, handwritten notes, even screenshots of internal performance dashboards. Nothing illegal, nothing stolen, just my work, backed up. Mine. That evening, I got a call from Harriet Chen, the longtime VP of Procurement at Highstone. "David?" she asked. "Please tell me the email we got is wrong. They said you've been let go?" My voice caught for a moment. "It's true." There was silence. Then a sigh. Unbelievable. Do they even know how many fires you've put out for us? How many times your name came up in board meetings as the reason we renewed? "I guess they're looking for a new direction," I said, trying not to sound bitter. "Well," she said with steel in her voice, "they'd better be ready. Our contract's up next quarter. I'm calling an emergency review, and David, wherever you land, call me first." She wasn't the only one. By midnight, my phone had buzzed nonstop. Bryce Lambert from Corvus, Dr. Penelope Shaw from Ardent Clinics, even Maggie from Fulbright Banks, a notoriously hard-nosed negotiator who once tore into our pricing model for sport, sent me a one-line message. "If you're setting up shop, I want a seat at the table." I didn't answer any of them just yet. I needed time. Not to plan revenge, but to make sure I wasn't walking blindly into something fueled by spite. I wasn't a man of drama. I believed in legacy, in quiet results, in building things the right way. But it was becoming clear. Brandon hadn't just fired an employee. He'd pulled the pin on the grenade that held together Valmont's strongest division.
The morning after I was dismissed from Valmont Apparel, I sat at my kitchen table nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, not sure if I was ready to face the day. I hadn't even touched my inbox when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't expected so soon. Clara West, head of procurement at Oakview Health Systems, our largest account. Her voice was sharp, anxious. "Tell me this isn't true, David." I sighed. "It is, Clara. As of yesterday afternoon, I'm no longer with Valmont." There was a pause, then a low exhale. "Unbelievable. We renewed last year because of you. You're the only one who understood our compliance schedule. Ellis doesn't even know who our account manager is." I stayed silent. I had promised myself I wouldn't speak ill of the company, no matter how I'd been treated. Clara picked up on it. "What happened?" she finally asked. "They said it was restructuring. New leadership, new direction. My position was eliminated." She scoffed. Funny how people in corner offices forget the relationships that actually hold their contracts together. I didn't disagree, but I didn't have to say it out loud. Clara thanked me for the transparency and said she'd be in touch soon. That was just the beginning. By noon, I'd heard from Reggie Jensen at Horizon Logistics, Danielle Chu from Westview Bank, and Carla from Meridian Pharmaceuticals. They all had the same mixture of confusion and frustration. None had received any formal handoff. No one knew who was now in charge of their accounts, and worse, Ellis, the newly minted VP of Client Operations, was already reaching out, attempting to rebuild trust. I told each of them the same thing. I'd been let go, I had no insight into the transition plan, and I was weighing my options. I never once asked for their business or badmouthed my replacement. I didn't need to. The damage had already been done by them. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the fallout had begun. By early afternoon, I started getting texts from my old team. Sophia, my top account strategist, Malik in operations, and Jonah, my go-to problem solver for client emergencies. What the hell is going on? Claire is threatening to walk. Ellis just called a damage control meeting. No one's buying it. Dude, clients are canceling renewal calls left and right. This is bad. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't want anyone getting caught in the crossfire if Ellis suspected I was still involved. And then came the texts from him. David, we need to talk. There's a situation with Oakview. Can we meet? This isn't how we wanted this to go. Please call me. I ignored them all. Ellis had been gunning for my role since the merger. He thought by taking me out, he'd inherit my accounts and credibility. But what he didn't understand was that you can't inherit trust. You earn it over time, through mistakes, late-night saves, and being the first person a client calls when something breaks at 2 a.m. By evening, Sophia called. Ellis is panicking, she whispered. Oakview called corporate. She wants to move Oakview's Q3 order to a different supplier immediately. And she said she'd rather eat the cancellation fee than deal with someone who doesn't know her business. My stomach dropped. That was a $1.8 million annual contract. If Oakview left, others would follow. Sophia continued. He's blaming you, saying you're sabotaging us from the outside. I haven't done a thing, I said firmly. I've taken a few calls and answered honestly. That's it. I know, but that's not the story going around. Legal's starting to get involved. Later that night, I received an email from Vailimont's legal department, thinly veiled legalese accusing me of violating a non-solicitation understanding. Except I never signed one. 14 years of trust, no issues, and suddenly I was being painted as a saboteur? I forwarded the email to my attorney friend Paul Henderson, a contract specialist I'd helped years ago with a vendor referral. He replied within the hour. David, they're bluffing. I reviewed your original contract. No non-solicitation clause. They're trying to intimidate you. It was laughable and sad. Instead of fixing their mistake, they were trying to muzzle the one person who'd actually kept their revenue flowing. The next day, I got a LinkedIn message from Danielle Chu at Westview Bank. We're not renewing with Vaillimont. Just a heads up, they're asking questions about whether you're consulting elsewhere. If you do end up landing somewhere, call me. By Friday, I had 4 similar messages. Word was spreading, and it wasn't because I was campaigning. It was because when real relationships are built, they don't dissolve overnight. Clients weren't loyal to a logo, they were loyal to me. And Ellis was realizing that far too late. I spent the weekend updating my personal CRM and organizing my portfolio. I didn't know where I'd land next, but I knew this. I was going to land somewhere. And this time, I'd bring people with me. Not just clients, but principals. They fired me like I was invisible. But their silence was now roaring louder than they'd ever imagined.
I didn't want vengeance. I didn't need headlines or retaliation. What I craved was clarity, a clean space to build again, this time without politics, without Ellis breathing down my neck with spreadsheets that reduced human relationships to dollar signs. That's when I reached out to Eric Nolan, a former colleague from my early days at Vaillimont. Eric had since become COO at Havenware, a boutique competitor known for its integrity, flexibility, and, most importantly, respect for the people who kept the business alive. We met at a quiet cafe tucked off a side street, away from the eyes and ears of the industry. I told him everything.
how I was blindsided, how the team was crumbling under Ellis's botched takeover, and how clients were already pulling back. Eric leaned in. "You're exactly what we've been missing, David. Full autonomy. I don't care about job titles. I care about results. If you want the Eastern region, it's yours. And I'll make you a partner. Bring whoever you want." I didn't say yes immediately. I wanted to sleep on it. But as I drove home, I couldn't help but think about Sophia, Malik, and Jonah. I thought about how they'd been flagged for termination, probably in the same restructuring slide deck that quietly pushed me out. People like Ellis didn't see value in loyalty, only in cost reductions. That night, I made 3 phone calls. Sophia answered first. "If you're calling, I already know it's something big," she said before I even spoke. "It's a fresh start, with people who get it. We'd be rebuilding from scratch, but we'd be in control. Eric offered me a partner role. He wants all of us." There was no hesitation. "I'm in." Malik said the same. "You stood up for us when no one else did. I've been waiting for this call." Jonah's answer made me smile. "Let's build it right this time." 1 week later, we signed contracts with Havenware. It wasn't flashy. No big press releases, just 4 people with nothing but clean slates, relentless work ethic, and a quiet storm of determination. We didn't reach out to a single client, but the moment word got out that we had joined forces, the calls started rolling in again. This time, they weren't asking for updates. They were asking to follow us. Clara from Oakview was the first. Valamont sent over their Q3 roadmap. It's a joke. Half your old team is gone, and no one seems to know how our delivery pipeline works anymore. If you're somewhere new, we want to transition. Quietly, of course. I gave there our general info inbox. Nothing more. Havenware's legal was crystal clear. Until my non-compete expired, I couldn't directly solicit, but they could make their own decisions. Within days, Horizon Logistics, Westview Bank, and Miradyne all inquired about our services. All cited the same concerns: delays, errors, unreturned emails. The machine Ellis tried to run without us was sputtering, and the market noticed. Havenware had never handled contracts that large before. Eric's eyes widened when he saw the volume of interest. "You said you were bringing relationships, but I didn't realize how deep they went." I replied, "Because they weren't clients, they were partners." To keep up, we expanded immediately, hired 3 new account managers, revamped the CRM system, and added overnight fulfillment to meet Oakview's standards. It was intense, unforgiving, and exhilarating. Ellis, meanwhile, didn't stay quiet. I received a call from an unknown number. I let it ring. A voicemail came through. His voice, terse and bitter. "This is getting out of hand, David. I don't know what you told them, but you're actively dismantling years of Valamont work. This is borderline illegal. I suggest you call me back before this goes any further." I didn't return the call. The truth was, I hadn't told anyone anything beyond the facts, and Ellis knew it. But his version of leadership had collapsed under its own arrogance. A few days later, Sophia walked into our new Havenware office with a huge grin. "You won't believe what just landed in our inbox. Diane from Westview forwarded a pitch deck Valamont sent out. They're offering 20% discounts to keep clients from switching." "Desperate," Malik muttered. "More than that," I said. "They're scared. They're realizing too late that people don't follow discounts, they follow trust." That week, we finalized 4 new contracts. Havenware's Eastern Division, our tiny squad, had generated more business in 2 weeks than their entire Q1 projection. And we were just getting started. We didn't work longer hours, we worked smarter. We implemented workflows Valamont had refused to adopt. We brought empathy to logistics. We gave clients direct access to real people, not ticket systems. And we never once looked back.
LS thought threats would make me retreat. After word got out that multiple major clients had quietly followed me to Havenware, his panic became transparent. First, it was a passive-aggressive email. "We're aware of your activities, David. There could be legal consequences if this continues." Then a cease and desist letter arrived from Sterling Thread's in-house counsel, rattling off vague accusations of violating a non-solicitation clause. But here's the thing. I never signed one. My attorney, Paul Delgado, reviewed the documents and chuckled. "This is smoke and mirrors, David. A bluff. Legally meaningless. They're grasping because they're bleeding, and they know you hold the knife whether you use it or not." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. What followed was a corporate unraveling in slow motion. By the time Sterling's Q2 earnings rolled in, the Midwest division, my former territory, was down 42% in revenue. Clients weren't renewing. Orders were late. Customer service was chaos. Entire workflows had collapsed because the one thing they'd cut from the budget was trust. Alice quietly stepped down, citing health reasons. No farewell email, no LinkedIn post. Just vanished, like he'd never been there. Meanwhile, Havenware thrived. What started as 4 people sharing folding tables became a full-blown division with over 30 employees. But it wasn't just growth, it was referral momentum. Clients like Oakview and Westview weren't just staying, they were advocating. Clara introduced us to her sister's fintech startup. Diane from Westview sent over 2 contacts at a healthcare conglomerate. We weren't chasing leads, we were cultivating loyalty. Eric couldn't believe the velocity. He told me one morning as we reviewed projections, "We're 5 quarters ahead of schedule." And then, just when it seemed things couldn't get more surreal, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. "Hi, David. This is Michelle from Sterling Thread's Board of Directors. We're reaching out regarding an urgent matter concerning the Midwest Division. We'd appreciate a conversation at your earliest convenience." I called Paul first. He said, "Let me guess. They want to sell." I said, "They're bleeding. They know we've captured the clients, the staff, the workflow. What's left is a name and some dusty office furniture." Still, I agreed to a meeting. Michelle was composed, corporate, but the desperation peeked through. "We've assessed that continued operations of the Midwest Division are no longer viable. However, your team has managed to retain and grow most of the business. We'd like to explore possible transfer of ownership." Translation: they wanted to offload a failing division and cut their losses. I didn't gloat, I just listened. Then I asked the question that changed everything. At what price? The number they offered was less than our Q3 earnings. I ran the numbers with Eric. We could fold the division into Havenware, keep the remaining staff we respected, and turn the rest into warehouse or R&D space. More importantly, we'd reclaim the legacy, the relationships, the foundation we had built, but this time without the corporate weight dragging us down. So we bought it, quietly, for pennies on the dollar. The press release didn't mention Ellis or the collapse. It simply read, "Havenware to acquire former Sterling Thread's Midwest division in strategic expansion." But insiders knew. The building I had once walked into for 14 years, under different CEOs, through good days and brutal ones, now bore a Havenware logo above the door. My door. But it felt different. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. I called Sophia, Malik, and Jonah to the office for the announcement. I stood in the same conference room Ellis once used to gut our division and told them, "We're home, but now we're the ones writing the rules." Jonah laughed. "Does this mean I can finally replace the break room coffee machine?" "Replace it. You're getting 2. We rebuilt from within, retraining the few legacy staff that chose to stay. We honored the culture we once had, only stronger, cleaner. We hosted a vendor summit to realign partnerships. We created a mentorship program for junior reps, and for the first time in years, people showed up to work excited. A month after the acquisition, we hosted a reunion BBQ on the company lot. No suits, no sales pitches. Just good food, music, and faces that had once scattered after the restructuring, now smiling, gathered again. Diane from Westview stopped by. This place feels alive again, like the early days. I said, because the people who made it work are running it now. And that was the truth. Ellis tried to strip the soul out of a division and replace it with margins and spreadsheets. What he failed to grasp was this: people don't follow companies, they follow values. And when leadership becomes too arrogant to listen, they lose the one thing they can't buy back: trust. We didn't need to dismantle Sterling Threads. They did it to themselves. We just happened to be there when the walls crumbled, ready with open arms to welcome the people and purpose they left behind.
A year had passed since I was escorted out of Sterling Threads with nothing but a cardboard box and a silent nod. And yet, here I was, standing in front of the same building, but this time, my logo was on the door. Havenware. A symbol not of revenge, but of reclamation. Inside, laughter echoed through the halls. Clara from Client Relations was giving the new hires a tour. Jonah had just presented his first client pitch and nailed it. Malik was mentoring 2 junior reps, sharing the same wisdom I once passed to him. The energy was different. It wasn't about fear of the next restructuring memo or obsessing over quarterly optics. It was about building something real, a culture where people mattered, where trust wasn't a marketing slogan, it was the currency of every decision. At home that evening, Eliza had set the table. Spaghetti, my favorite. As we sat down, she looked at me, her eyes soft but curious. Was it worth it, David? Everything you went through? I took a breath, thinking not about the lawsuits or the acquisitions, but about the people. The clients who stayed not because of a brand, but because of relationships. The team who chose loyalty over a paycheck. The quiet wins, small but honest, that built this second act. I finally answered, it was worth it. Not because I proved them wrong, but because I proved myself right. This story isn't about revenge, it's about recognition. Real recognition doesn't come from a LinkedIn post or a corner office. It comes from looking around and realizing you've built something that reflects your values. Something no CEO, no restructuring, no corporate buzzword can take away. To anyone watching this who's been pushed aside, laid off, or underestimated, hear this. Your worth isn't tied to a title or someone else's spreadsheet. It's tied to your character, your work ethic, and the people's lives are better because you showed up and gave a damn. You're not disposable. You're the foundation they always take for granted until it's gone. So build something of your own, and build it better. If this story moved you, or if you've been through something similar, share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. Don't forget to subscribe for more true, powerful stories about justice, redemption, and second chances.